All right, what's up, Buff fans? Troy and I reconvening after his trip out to Kansas, and we're dealing with some breaking news this morning with Eddie Lampkin and Javon Hadley entering the portal. And on top of that, we had spring practice last week, and the men lost against Marquette in the second round of the tournament. They played three really exciting games, so there's a lot to recap on our end. And I think we're just going to start off with our most recent news this morning with Eddie and Javon. It's something that I think we anticipated. We knew there was going to be high turnover with Cody Williams and Tristan and Luke leaving, and KJ. There was some. There were sites there on the NBA. Like he could, get off the boards or, join. There's potential for him to make it to the next level for sure. So I think with that, it's some foreshadowing with that KJ is going to the next level with Javon and Eddie leaving because they see the team and they don't have KJ there. There's not a lot of roots and bones and I guess shooting left to sustain that team. So they entered the transfer portal and they're looking for a new opportunity. What was your reaction to the news this morning?
Yeah, I wasn't surprised either. I think that reading some of the tea leaves, like you said, it means that obviously Tristan and Luke are graduating, and it likely means that KJ Simpson and Cody Williams are off. Cody Williams likely to the NBA, KJ potentially the NBA, potentially to the transfer portal. I'm sure there are a lot of college coaches who would be willing to open up the wallet for the services of KJ Simpson. Um, I kind of thought that KJ would be the first domino in this whole thing, but Eddie and Javon deciding to transfer this morning is an indicator that they kind of know what is coming with KJ because they're looking at the landscape of what's left after losing Tristan and Luke and KJ and Cody, and they're looking at what's pretty much a barren roster right now. And now with Eddie and Javon leaving, it looks like at least the entire top six of the rotation from this last season is going to be gone. I do want to shout out this year's team because everything that they kind of dealt with the whole year. Tristan being out, Cody being in and out and in and out, Javon missing time, a little bit of time, and then having to play with the mask. Finish with a program record for wins, second round of the NCAA tournament. I mean, we were sitting before the women's game on Sunday, and we were like, with 5 minutes left in the game, and we kind of were like, imagine saying that they would be in this spot 6 weeks ago in it was a one possession game at that point, in a one possession game with second seeded Marquette with a chance to go to the Sweet 16. So for them to even get to that point, what is a testament to that group, and really a great job by them turning around a season that looked lost after that UCLA loss on the road at Pauley Pavilion, and turning it into one of the best seasons of the Tad Boyle era.
Yeah, the resilience that this team displayed was, definitely very impressive on your notes as well. I mean, I was debating traveling to Vegas because I was like, if they have to play Arizona, I mean, I didn't think this team would get this far. I knew they had a strong ending and them getting a 3 seed. I was just like, I don't know, they might have to play in the first round of that tournament, but they really defied all the odds despite, the injuries they had to deal with, and just, they had to really turn it around really fast. And they knew if they wanted to get to the NCAA tournament, which they barely did, but they still made it, they would have to put up, a really record-breaking ending to really penetrate that first four, and they did. And they really fought their way in those 3 games. I mean, that Florida game was, I mean, there's so many this whole weekend. I'm trying to remember like every single game, like the Texas A&M Houston game. The first round is always so crazy. There's just so many upsets, and this with Colorado and that Florida game was just insane. The way that it ended, and just KJ coming up so clutch there, like that is what March is all about, and this is what this team has been preparing for. Like this wasn't a team, as you said, like back in February that we thought could really do really meet these heights and like really set a new like standard and just reach those expectations that Tad Boyle set for that team. So, this was a really like special and like unique year where everyone just kind of came together at the end and like really played their asses off. And hats off to them and what they did. But now it's after all the,
Now,
success they had, they're facing a pretty, I think I want maybe like a dark future just with the Big 12 and them losing literally their top 6 rotation guys.
yeah.
What are you seeing on the roster end of that and just what scholarships are looking like?
Yeah, it's looking bleak right now. So who's left at the moment? Julian Hammond, obviously missed the end of the season with that knee injury. But he should be back unless he elects to transfer also. But Colorado kid, I would guess that he would stick around. Javon Ruffin, Bangot Dak, who Buff fans have to be just ecstatic
I
about
got that
the
season.
future of Bangot Dak after the way that he played over the last month. He was phenomenal. Plays really hard, really smart player. Um, Rim protector, lob threat, dynamic as a roller. So he's played well. Asan Jope also kind of got surpassed by Dak at the end of the year, but a lot of potential there. And then RJ Smith, who was promising before his injury, Courtney Anderson, who redshirted this year. Harrison Carrington should be back. He was a walk-on. And then they've got the 3 recruits coming in, Andrew Crawford, Sebastian Rancic, and Felix Casares. So that puts them at 9 scholarships. So they have 4 more to play with, which Tad Boyle has been very outspoken about how he does not like the transfer portal. He does not enjoy using the transfer portal. Only one transfer in last year was Eddie Lampkin, who he needed to replace Lawson Lovering when Lawson left late in the process. But the roster that I just mentioned in a Big 12 that is going to probably compete for double-digit tournament spots next year is just not going to cut it. So Tad really is out of options. He's going to have to get in the portal and find some really, really good players, or the team just isn't going to be very good. It doesn't look like. He's got 4 scholarships left, as I mentioned. There's, the portal is filling up, obviously, every day it's entry after entry after entry. One name to watch that I thought was interesting is Belmont's Cade Tyson. He was a double-digit scorer last year for the Bruins. His brother Hunter Tyson is a rookie with the Nuggets right now, so maybe he wants to come play close to his older brother. But other than that, I mean, we'll see what happens. But CU is going to have to Tad is going to have to kind of get uncomfortable and look for some reinforcements in the portal.
Somewhat rebuilding their starting 5. I mean, I think I see Bangot Dak at the 5 position next year as that one remaining staple piece, but they'll definitely need a wing. They're going to need a point guard. They're
a lot of wings.
Yeah, they're going to need to replace literally 1 through 4.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, we'll see what Julian Hammond looks like. I was
Yeah.
sad for him that he didn't kind of get to finish the year. So we'll see if he's capable of kind of carrying not the load that KJ did, because KJ just did so much. He played so many minutes.
Yeah.
Was such a crucial piece offensively and defensively. But we'll see if Julian Hammond is ready to run the point for 30 minutes a game next year. And he might have to if they don't get anyone else in, whether he's ready to or not.
Yeah. I'm just checking Twitter now. I'm like, okay, I just want to see. I don't want to make sure there's no KJ news right now.
I know I've got the noties on we'll see.
Yeah. A great ending
I assume KJ would do the same thing that Tristan did last year.
Yeah, test out the waters.
Test out the combine and stuff, and then if he wants to come back into the portal.
Yeah. Maybe a KJ Simpson return is not off the table, but
No. It's not.
No.
It is in the low percentages, but it is not off the table.
Certainly. Well, great ending to the season. I mean, Marquette, I was just on the edge of my seat that whole game. I was sitting on like my dad's recliner that if you like get too close to the edge, it like tips over. Almost tipped it over a couple times at my parents' house, but excited to watch them. You know, we haven't seen them go this far in the tournament in quite a while, at least not in our day, which was I mean, we
Yeah, they
saw
were in the same
2021, but you know,
they
it
were in
was
the same round, but they were
yeah,
never really in the game in
no.
2021. Um, Super fun basketball game, like you said, though. Both of the games that they played, the one against Florida and the one against Marquette, really fun, really high quality games. And, they had their chances against Florida. They took them. Against Marquette, they did not. And Marquette's a great team. Tyler Kolek, great point guard, gets them into
The left
a
hand
big
man.
shot pretty much
So
every single time. Yeah, he was phenomenal. And that's the beauty of it.
the way the cookie crumbled in
That's
March.
why we love March.
I won't get into my brackets. We're gonna talk about football now. We're gonna
Oh
pivot
God.
because last
Fine.
week
What bracket
was the
talk on
first
here?
week since we saw the team back in Utah in November. We got to talk with Phil Loholt, O-line coach, wide receiver coach Jason Phillips, players LeJontay Wester, Preston Hodge, and then we talked to the offensive coordinator Pat Shurmur, Robert Livingston, DC, and of course Coach Prime himself wearing like that painter suit. That's an outfit I haven't seen before.
He comes up with something new every time.
Yeah, I think he has to come out in his best fit for the first press conference of the year. So yeah, we got to, touch base with them, see where they're at. I mean, spring ball is all kind of a time of experimenting, installing things, just figuring out, what page everyone wants to be on and just kind of their philosophies going into the season. So when we talked to Pat Shurmur, and I think it was just cool to hear what, his experience was last year. And, he, at the beginning of the press conference, he just kind of went over every game and what he was dealing with Shador and how he was getting banged up. And him and Sean Lewis were just kind of trying to figure it out every week. And, there was a lot of learning lessons for him. And I think, a big reason why he's on the staff now is one, that familiarity he has with Shador and, the Colorado program, the offense. And of course, I think the biggest thing as well is his NFL experience being an offensive coordinator and a head coach. So, this is going to be a new offense that we're all going to like learn together. But their primary thing to do this year, and that Pat Shurmur mentioned, is to run the ball and protect the passer. Woo. So, I mean, those are the ultimate goals. I think that's like the biggest problem that he witnessed week after week. So they brought in, 5 new offensive linemen from the portal who have played a lot of ball in the past. So Pat Shurmur just assembling the pieces here. And I also kind of noted just Shador and his relationship. Shador mentioned like he understands me, like they have a good quarterback, offensive coordinator bond and just comprehension of what they want to achieve together. So they seem to be on the same page, and it's good that they brought in, I think you could bring in a new offensive coordinator and try to navigate those waters. But I think it is positive to have that background with one another between Pat Shurmur and Shador, just to, really understand I guess, the battle Shador had to face every week. And I think Shurmur as well. I think there's just a lot of knowledge and expertise to build, a productive collegiate offense. And now it's just putting pen to paper there. So yeah.
Yeah, I think
Last week.
yeah, you mentioned running the ball. Obviously, that's been hashed out time and time again. I thought it was great when when we talked to Jordan Seaton, he said, I'm paraphrasing here. I don't remember the exact quote, but he said, watching them run the ball, it was pretty horrific last year. Um,
Yes.
Facts. So, and Jordan Seaton said, we're going to run the ball, which is good. Pat Shurmur said that also. The most interesting thing that I took from Pat Shurmur when we talked to him, he did say, because I was kind of curious how much of it would look like the CU offense last year, which was primarily Sean Lewis's stuff. And then Pat Shurmur was kind of calling Sean Lewis's plays towards the end of the year. And then how much of it will be Pat Shurmur stuff that we've seen in the NFL. And Pat Shurmur said something along the lines of, in the NFL, you're using a lot of bigger bodies, a lot of, bigger personnel, 11 personnel, 12 personnel. And he did say, we're still going to be in 10, or we're in 10 personnel a lot with 4 wide receivers and no tight ends on the field. And that was pretty telling to me that there is still going to be a lot of the same, not necessarily schemes, but the same ideals as the offense had last year. It's going to be still a lot of spread out, a lot of shotgun stuff. So obviously we will see what it looks like come the spring game, or hopefully at practice leading up to the spring game. But I thought that was really interesting from what Pat Shurmur said about kind of the blend of how he was going to turn his NFL offense into a college offense this year.
Yeah. Said he's feeling re-energized by all the youth around him. So
Yes. He said he and Dion both.
Yeah, there. Dion also mentioned too. I think I'll start with Robert Livingston before we get into Dion,
Yes.
because this is the first time that we've talked to him, and
Mhm.
young DC,
Very
from
bright
Bengals,
guy.
of course, and he mentioned that he won't be running the same playbook as Cincinnati. I'd assume, but it's going to be, he's going to bring in those same ideals and working with the secondary and trying to, get the best out of his players. And he mentioned that as well. He wants to craft a scheme around the personnel and their strengths. And of course, he mentioned Travis Hunter, being a shutdown corner of sorts and a unicorn. And, there's a lot of new pieces there within the trenches. So, he has a secondary mindset. It'll be interesting to see how he can craft, from front to back, a defense that can stop the run. Another thing that Dion mentioned is a big priority that they wanted to address in the offseason, just bringing in bigger guys that can, limit some rushing yards come Saturday. So we're going to see some. Robert also mentioned they're going to see some, more situational defense, from down to down, figuring out, what's the most effective, what the offense is showing them. I think that's ultimately what you do on game day and in-game adjustments and whatnot. But good to talk with him and what he learned from Lou Anarumo back in Cincinnati. And what'd you take from Robert?
I'm excited about this defense. I'm excited. They have better personnel to stop the run now, as you mentioned. And you said that he talked about how it's not going to look the same as it did in Cincinnati, which I think is great, because the joy of, as I sat here on Sunday Ticket, Sunday after Sunday, the joy of watching Cincinnati's defense over the last couple of years as they've grown into a really, really good team is that their playbook doesn't even look the same 1 week after the last. Week to week, they do all kinds of different things based on their opponent, very game plan based. And Livingston kind of passing on not only what he learned from Lou, but the fact that it's not going to be the same as what it looked like in Cincinnati got me excited for the fact that he's not going to be afraid to make adjustments. He's not going to be afraid to change things up. He's not going to be afraid to do some unique stuff based on what his personnel is skilled at. So I'm looking forward to, because there's a lot of good athletes on this defense. There's a lot of good players. There's a lot more, especially up front, than there was last year. They still need linebackers, which I have said probably on every podcast since we started doing this. Dion addressed that also. When we talked to him, he did say we need more linebackers, which is not breaking news, but so keeping an eye on that in the spring transfer window. But after talking to Robert Livingston, really, really excited about just the different ways that he can use guys that are super talented, like Travis Hunter, obviously Shiloh Sanders, Preston Hodge can play inside, can play outside, can play some safety, the different spots that they can move guys around up front. I think they have a lot of guys that can play inside, a lot of guys that can play outside. Quincy Wiggins was talked about as one guy who's kind of been working both as a 3 tech and a 5 tech. So He's learning how to play inside and outside. BJ Green did that a lot at Arizona State. So really excited just to see the versatility of this defense, not only personnel wise, but scheme wise as well.
Certainly. Yeah, there's going to be interested to see what it looks like come the spring game. Dion mentioned it's going to be maybe Fox, maybe Pac-12 Network that has the broadcast on that. So yeah, maybe you can watch it from your own home.
I thought I was done with Pac-12 Network. Please,
same. I was like,
please don't bring me
isn't
back
it
to
over?
Pac-12 Network. Please,
Are we in the Big 12 now, or am I?
please. I think it's over the summer sometime is when that
Yeah,
official
once Big 12 Media Day
shit.
happens, that's officially we're in Big 12 country.
Free me from Pac-12 Network, please.
It's been too many years.
I'm ready for the ESPN Plus. I already have ESPN Plus. I can manage that. The Pac-12 Network.
I gotta log on to my dad's cable. Yeah, my
I
dad's
deleted the app from my phone this morning, actually, the Pac-12 app. I saw it there. I was like, no.
Never
No,
again.
never again.
But yeah, just talking with Dion, I was very getting all the different bits and pieces of his off season and what they've been doing, and they addressed the trenches, of course. And I think one thing that was kind of in the back of my mind that was talked about a lot was Shedeur and, his draft stock and what would that look like if he was to declare this year. Dion mentioned that he would be the second quarterback off the board and not the first. And that's a reason why Shedeur didn't declare this year, is because he wants to be the first quarterback off the board. And I think, another great season, a healthy season for sure. He could, definitely be that first quarterback off the board. I'll have to look at the landscape of next year's draft, but even the Buffs pro day is going to be loaded. Like, it's going to be like 20 guys. Like this year there's only 9 Buffs, but there are so many seniors that are going into next year's pro day. And sure, and is going to be the, of course, prominent guy there, but way far ahead there. I think Shedeur has a very bright future in the NFL and could be that, first quarterback off the board after his season in the Big 12. I think the Big 12 provides, I think just from a talent perspective, there are, a lot of competitive teams there, but I think this offense and what Shedeur can, put on the field is supersedes what Big 12 defenses might show him. I think they just have a lot of potential this year amongst, the landscape and what the Big 12 is offering, from a football standpoint, of course. So, and Travis is going to be there as well. So it's great to have, would it be Ryan Staub's season? I couldn't imagine a season without Shedeur this year. And that's just something that he mentioned. This last year wasn't the way that he wanted things to end. I think it'd be unfortunate if things were to end that way. So glad they're not, and get him for another year. And this is going to be, a big year for him to be that, talked about Caleb Williams guy, Jim Harbaugh mentioned JJ McCarthy over the over the weekend as
Jim
well.
Harbaugh loves him. Hey, Jim Harbaugh and JJ McCarthy won a championship. I respect the agenda pushing from Jim Harbaugh.
Oh, definitely. Chargers don't need a quarterback at the moment, but
yes, Justin Herbert hive. Let's go. Free Justin Herbert.
You love the Dolphins.
Yeah, it was interesting to hear them kind of acknowledge, because if I remember right, after the USC game, Shedeur, as he should, kind of sat up there and said, I can play with this guy, about Caleb Williams. But it was interesting to hear them kind of acknowledge that that Caleb Williams would have been the first overall pick, whether Shedeur was in the draft or not. It hurt my Drake May loving heart to hear that. But go Drake May. But you're right. Coming into next year, Shedeur is pretty clearly one. I think the top 2 quarterback prospects coming into the year are Shedeur Sanders and Carson Beck from Georgia. So it'll be fun to see them kind of duke it out during the year for who ends up. And there will be risers and fallers during the year, as there always are. But it'll be fun to see those 2 kind of duke it out for that top spot. You mentioned Travis. Travis is just such a good athlete, so versatile that he's a home run Top 5, top 10 pick, 100%. And yeah, you nailed it about the pro day. It was interesting to hear Shadur talk about his rehab too. He said he had a long rehab from that fractured back that kept him out of the Utah game. He said it was something that he had never really felt before, wanting to be out there and not being able to be, out there with his teammates. But he did say he's back 110% ready to go. So that was good news as well.
Definitely. I think with every spring, like we have our set roster, set guys, but Dion mentioned that they're gonna add several more pieces. Of course, you mentioned linebacker. I think they're set. I think tight end. You look at that room and it's a small room, but I think they're set there with the 4 guys. Luis Passarello, need to get a gauge on him and what's going on there. But Sam Hart, they picked him up from Ohio State, and yeah, he could be, there wasn't a lot of film on him, but there could be, some potential there as well. But it's going to be
Yeah,
Jamel
Colorado.
Metier really leading the troops there in that position.
Yeah.
Pretty set at offensive line, at least now. They have 12 scholarship guys. David Connor's not with the team right now. He's taking some time off for familial reasons. But yeah, it's just spring ball. They're kind of getting a feel for everything. Everyone's really liking what LeJontay Wester. At least we got to talk to him, and I think there's just so many new faces that we get to learn again this season. Just every new face that comes in, just what they went through in the past and what they did at their previous programs and what they can provide for Colorado. Yeah, spring's always a time just to get to know people better. It's hard to really pinpoint, where things really are in terms of from an offensive and defensive scheme, unless you go up against another team. Still really pushing for a spring game against another team.
Nikki's been pushing that for a while. You've been ready. You're ready to play.
I know. Wouldn't that just be great though?
Put on the pads.
Put on the pads. Let's hit it full force.
There we go.
Maybe
I thought it was great.
But
I thought it was great talking to LeJontay Wester and Preston Hodge, how much respect they already had for each other as new guys that came in here. Preston Hodge said that LeJontay Wester is one of his favorite guys to cover in practice. And LeJontay kind of echoed that matchup is one that really excites him in practice, and they already in such a short amount of time they love competing against each other. So I thought that was very telling.
Yeah, spring practice has been competitive. There's a couple fights that have happened. So
Dion loves the fights, he said.
Yeah.
Loves the fights.
It's good. It's good for morale. It's good for morale. We'll switch to women's hoops because they are in a very big matchup this weekend, a rematch against the Iowa Hawkeyes and Caitlin Clark. Last year, this going to the Sweet 16 is the farthest they've been in quite a long time. And they, it was just, this was such a big moment for them. But this year, in the way that this team has played and consistently stayed, within the AP top 25, top 10 teams, beat LSU at the beginning of the season, just the main conversation yesterday was just how prepared they are for Iowa, and just to get, it's their revenge game. All the girls were watching the Iowa West Virginia game, sending texts, just what they saw. They were sending texts to coach, and Coach J.R. Payne mentioned that she was texting Jalen. Jalen's like, "What are you seeing from this game?" And she's like, "I don't know. I'm doing an interview," but it's good to, kind of pick their brains about what they think of this matchup. And yeah, Sweet 16 game, Elite 8 on the line. Just their run in the tournament has been so strong so far. You went to Kansas. You and Nigel, shout out Nigel, went out to Kansas, drove back in the snowstorm. I just want to hear your experience about Kansas and your thoughts on this weekend's matchup.
Yeah, first about Kansas before we get into the game. Had a lot of fun out at Bramlage Coliseum at Kansas State. Watched a lot of good hoops. The Buffs beat Drake in their first round. Drake's a really good team. They had 29 wins coming in. Excellent point guard, Katie Dinnebier, who was the conference player of the year. She played really, really well. And Drake's a a really high octane offense, kind of, nobody's as high octane as Iowa, but Drake is a little bit similar in some of the ways that they play. And CU really shut him down in the second half. It was a close game at halftime. Drake scored a bunch of points in the first half. And Kendall Wetta career high 16 points in that game. So that was great to see as well, not only going forward this season, but for next season when she's going to be the starter at point guard, presumably. And then Sunday against Kansas State was awesome. It was one of the best game atmospheres that I've ever been in at a college basketball game. Bramlage was sold out. It was rocking. Really just a great, and JR opened her post game with this. It was just an awesome basketball environment to be in. And it was great to see the different kind of solutions that CU found during that game. Aaronette Vonleh had 7 steals in the first half, which was a new CU NCAA tournament record. And they were all on just picking off entry passes to Kansas State's star in the post, Ioka Lee. Then in the second half, Tamia Sadler scored 8 points in a row in the third quarter, 10 points in the second half in total. So it was great to see kind of Kendall Wetta had her moment against Drake, and then Tamia Sadler had her moment against Kansas State. These unsung heroes kind of popping up off the bench. And Kansas State scored 15 points in the second half at home, which I thought was really impressive from the CU defense. Great stat also from courtesy of my good buddy Brian Howe. Colorado is 2-57 in their last 59 road games against ranked teams. The only 2 wins were against Duke in the round of 32 last year to go to the Sweet 16, and against Kansas State to go to the Sweet 16 on Sunday. So Kansas was great, good hoops, good wins, great atmosphere. Loved Bramlage Coliseum, really nice place. Their media accommodations were phenomenal also. So overall, no notes, good stuff. But now we turn to the rematch. They are fired up. They are fired up for the rematch. I was digging into last year's game a little bit. Iowa won 87-77 in the Sweet 16. It was very close throughout. It was a 1-point game at halftime. Caitlin Clark had a huge game for anyone else, but a decently modest 31 points and 8 assists for herself. Anyone else, that's, a career game, but they did hold her in check decently. The Buffs were in foul trouble pretty much the entire time. 3 starters fouled out, and Tayana Jones also had 4 fouls in just 21 minutes. So pretty much the entire team was in and out of the game with fouls the entire time. But that's part of what Iowa does. One of the keys that I wrote down for this weekend is that CU has to figure out how to be physical without fouling. And Iowa is, they've gotten a rep for kind of flopping a little bit, but, I don't buy into that a whole lot. A lot of good teams do that. But they do draw fouls extremely well. They attack the basket. They shoot a lot of threes, but they also do a lot of work inside. But you can't let especially Caitlin Clark have freedom of movement. So they've got to figure out how to be physical without fouling, and they've got to control the tempo. If you saw, anyone listening out there saw the West Virginia versus Iowa game, West Virginia was very physical and they limited possessions, and it really made Iowa uncomfortable. CU doesn't want to play a slow game. They get really rough offensively when they start to slow things down. As they have in pretty much every fourth quarter for the last month, especially on Sunday against K-State. So CU has to they have to find the right balance, maintaining their tempo while also not letting Iowa get comfortable in a kind of run and gun game. I have some differences in Iowa from last year too, but your thoughts on the game coming up first.
It's just, you look across like the entire bracket, there's so many Pac-12 teams within that made it to the Sweet 16. It's 5 Pac-12 teams. Colorado's been, preparing for a moment like this all season. They've been really just playing so tough, playing some of, really difficult games. I mean, UCLA, USC, Oregon State, Stanford, just you can name any team in the Pac-12, maybe except Oregon. And they're built for a moment like this. Of course, you look at Caitlin Clark and her resume and just, all the State Farm commercials, and it's like, how do you stop this woman? That is certainly a key. And I think that's something that we discussed yesterday. We got to meet with the players, we got to meet with coach, and just talk to them. And fouling was the biggest thing. I remember just, Frida Foreman really upset on the bench because fouling is not really her game. And,
Yeah.
she drew a lot of fouls, and, she's a key contributor in getting 3-point shots and just being a scorer there. So they're going to need everyone, to play a clean game, but also just get Iowa out of their spots. Like, really, as you said, just maintain the tempo, maintain the pace on their end. Of course, it's going to, fluctuate a bit. This is Iowa. Like, they always figure out a way to win. But I think if you get Caitlin Clark frustrated, if she's like not hitting her usual shots, that is going to be a big key for them, because when she's not playing her best, it kind of feeds off to the rest of the team. There are a couple, key players on the Iowa Hawkeyes that can also score. I know they mentioned they're missing like Carrazzo. I don't know if I'm saying her name right, but they're
Yeah,
missing
Sonano.
Sonano.
Yeah, she
So close
graduated.
for me.
Um,
Just missing that post presence there from last year. So, this is a game they can totally win. They've played really tough teams this year, and they have all the tools. Like, this could be, they could keep advancing and keep winning. And they could play LSU again if they win, because on the other end of that bracket is UCLA and LSU. So they could face either of those teams afterwards. But I think getting past Iowa, of course, is the most prominent thing as they travel to Albany over the weekend. Yeah, they have Maddie Nolan to do. They're pulling for Maddie Nolan. I think it's just, it's just a group of veterans that were built for this moment. They each have their own skill set and have shown that they can, have those unsung heroes like Kendall Wetta and Tamia Sadler. Like, they are, a team with multiple weapons that sometimes you can't game plan for, and they just, are able to go on a run. So I think we need a clean game from Jalen Sherrod as well, because sometimes she can't get into foul trouble, but when she, at least has like 3 fouls going into the fourth, they're usually in a safe spot and are able to utilize her for, all 36 minutes, of the game. So yeah, foul trouble, very important. And just feeling confident in their 3-ball, finding their spots. And maybe, I know Colorado's really big on their defense. I think that's something West Virginia was able to slow down Iowa with, is just, their presence in Iowa's front court. So big on defense there, and finding their shots, running their way into the paint. Arianette Vonleh feeding her a bunch. What they've been doing so far. So they have all the tools necessary to win and beat, Caitlin Clark, just limiting her and everything that you mentioned. But yeah, I think any final thoughts?
I think it is a more beatable Iowa team than last year as well. Still, obviously, a very good team, but you mentioned that Monica Sonano, their star post player from last year, has graduated. The girl who's taken her place, Hannah Stolke, is very good, but she's younger. She's a better athlete than Sonano was, but she's just less polished. Sonano was a really good finisher at the rim, but she was also really crafty with kind of the ways that she would get good positioning. She would get catches deep in the lane. Stolke, though, fits in with Iowa's tempo. She runs the floor extremely well. CU's going to have to be really cognizant about getting back, because Stolke will run the floor and get so many easy buckets just off of outlet passes. Kate Martin and Gabby Marshall are on the wing again for Iowa. They were there last year. They're shooters, but they're a little bit better as decision makers this year too. They can attack a closeout, make a good decision, hit a pull-up jumper, make a dump off pass, make a nice kick out, things like that. One injury to watch on the Iowa side as well is Molly Davis, who's kind of Caitlin Clark is the point guard, but Molly Davis is kind of the other point guard on the floor for them. She injured her knee on senior day for Iowa against Ohio State, and she tried to play last weekend, didn't end up going, but is trying to return in the postseason. So we'll see if she's able to go. But without her, they become even more Caitlin Clark centric than they already are, because she's kind of the other person on their team that can initiate the offense. Like, hey, we can put Caitlin Clark in the strong side corner, and now we can run an action, and you can't help off of Caitlin Clark in the corner. Or, hey, we can run Caitlin Clark off of a stagger here, and maybe she's not open, but Molly Davis can, if there's a slip, she can find it, or she can get into another action on the second side. They don't really have that without her. So that's a big thing to watch as well, because it's almost exclusively Caitlin Clark with the ball in the hand, or in her hand, starting the possession if Molly Davis is out. So that's one injury to watch. You mentioned the other half of the bracket, which LSU and UCLA is probably two of the top 5 teams in terms of just pure talent. 2 of the top 3 teams, probably in terms of just pure talent, are South Carolina, LSU, and UCLA. And the fact that that is a Sweet 16 matchup is pretty incredible. But CU's ready. You know, they had their chances to win last year. They've played against 5 of the other 15 Sweet 16 teams this year, with the other 4 Pac-12 teams and LSU in that season opener. So they're excited, and they will be ready to go on Saturday afternoon.
Indeed. 1:30 tip, Mountain Time.
ABC Network TV. How
Yeah,
about it?
big time for the Buffs. Prime time slot. I mean, another crazy weekend of March hoops. I have Duke in one bracket, and then I have Houston in another bracket, but I won't get into my bracket. But I've had enough pain and suffering in the last couple weeks. So women's hoops is the savior here, and excited to see how they take on Iowa and if they can come out with a win there. So
The
yeah,
women's bracket
wrap
is
it up.
good.
Yeah.
My men's bracket is terrible. But yes, go ahead. Hit the
I need
horn.
to check my women's bracket. I'm doing a one for my job, and whoever wins gets crumble cookies. So, but I can't access the app. I gotta.
I don't like crumble cookies. Hot take.
Oh my God, I did not know that. Well,
Sorry to kill the vibe.
the more you know, folks. We learned a lot today. Troy, thank you for your insight as always. Yeah, we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for catching up with us, and we'll talk to you all very soon.
Bye, friends.
Peace.